Okay, we're continuing with Who's Minding the Mind, and now we're starting with paragraph 9. If you recall, in paragraph 8, we were told of an experiment which was used as proof or evidence that there is some validity to this idea of psychological hot wiring. Now in paragraph 9 we have a similar experiment which is being used in a similar way to prove again that, as we said, the evidence for psychological hot wiring is overwhelming, right? So here we know in another experiment means another, that is, there was already one, and now here's another one. It's continuing the idea of what came before it with this word another. So again, let's look at the elements of this research. It was done by Dutch psychologists. It was published in 2005, right? Who were the participants? Undergraduates. Okay, and what were they asked to do? First of all, they were asked to sit in a cubicle and fill out a questionnaire. Right? Now, that was one part of the experiment. Now, another part of the experiment was that hidden in the room was a bucket of water with a splash of citrus-scented cleaning fluid. Right? So just sitting there in the bucket, and this gave off a faint odor of citrus, I would imagine. Citrus, lemons, oranges, clementinos, grapefruit. So they were doing the questionnaire. While they were in the room, there was just a bucket of water that gave off this faint citrusy smell. When they were done with the questionnaire, they had a snack, a biscuit that was crumbly, from the word crumb, crumb. It was crumbly. And while they were having the snack, the researchers filmed them covertly, in secret. They filmed them while they were having the snack and here's what they found. So up till now, we were learning about the methods. Who were the participants? What was done, right? And now, they filled out a questionnaire without knowing that they were being influenced by the smell. Then they ate crumbly biscuit as a snack, and the researchers filled them while they were having their snack. And now we come to the findings. The findings were that the students cleared away crumbs 3 times more often than a comparison group. Right? So now we know that there were 2 groups. One is the participants who underwent what we just said, and another was a comparison group. Could say a control group that had the same questionnaire in a room but no cleaning scent. So this was the defining difference, the cleaning scent. The psychologist who ran this study, the senior author, said it's a very big effect and they really had no idea they were doing it. So let's continue and see what they're talking about in this section when they say the same brain circuits. So now up till now they've told us about theoretical findings. I should say research findings. They explained the concept. They explained how it works. They gave us some ideas of what we should be willing to accept and what we should not. And then they brought us evidence that this actually has some validity, this idea of priming the unconscious. Now they're saying, all right, let's go into the real world and look for evidence of these unconscious effects. Okay, so here we go, and we know that this paragraph is now switching from what we had before to real world evidence, and they give us some examples. The effect is clear. Okay, the effect is clear. And how did we know? Because they give us some examples. They have to show us what they mean when they make a statement. So anyone who has ever run out to the car to avoid the rain and ended up driving too fast. Why driving too fast? What's the connection? Because they ran to the car. Or rushed off to pick up clothes from the laundry and returned with wine and cigarettes. Why wine and cigarettes? Well, remember we talked about way up here at the top there was a statement where it talked about activate goals and motives that people already have. Remember that? We said that this unconscious motivations can activate goals and motives that people already have. Getting wine and cigarettes, perhaps, is that goal and motive someone might have, but not something that they were thinking about when they went out. The brain appears, and now look, we're going to now get into physiological information in this paragraph 11. The brain appears to use the same neural circuits to execute an unconscious act as it does a conscious act. Right? So again, we're making a comparison. Unconscious act and conscious one. Comparing between the two, we're saying that there is this similarity in the brain that uses the same neural circuits. Okay. In a study that appeared in the journal Science, so now we're looking again at a study. The study is being brought once again to back up this statement. They make a statement, then, as they should, they bring us evidence by showing us a study. Okay? So what happens in the study? First of all, there were some neuroscientists. They were English and French. And they performed brain imaging. That was what they did on 18 men and women. Those were the participants who were playing a computer game for money. Right? So what were the details of this study? The players held a hand grip and were told that the tighter they squeezed when an image of money flashed on the screen, the more money they could keep. Okay? So they were given a certain direction. Were they told the exact reason they were doing this? Well, they were given a certain direction. We don't know yet if they were told the exact reason, but we can imagine that they were not, because the whole point of these is to see what the unconscious does in terms of acting on the conscious. Okay? So, to put it in the right order, the 18 men and women played a computer game. They were given a hand grip, and they were given instructions that when they saw an image of money, they should tighten their hold on the hand grip, and they would get more money. So, as expected, right? As expected meaning that this was what they were expecting to find. Perhaps this is their hypothesis. The players squeezed harder when an image of a British pound flashed by than the image of a penny. Right? Clearly, we probably all know a pound is worth a lot more than a penny. Regardless of whether they consciously perceived the pictures, many of which flew by subliminally. What's interesting about this is that now we're seeing the use of the word subliminal in a research article, which is being brought to us in order to explain this statement of the connection between conscious and unconscious. Remember, we saw subliminal before when they were telling us about the advertising man and the claims he made that are not true. Let's see now how this is different. Right? So, as expected, the player squeezed harder when the image of a British pound flashed by than when the image of a penny did, regardless of whether they consciously perceived the pictures or not. Okay, so again, two kinds of pictures, consciously or subliminally. Another comparison. But, remember, the scientists were doing brain imaging. But the circuits activated in their brains were similar as well. An area called the ventral pallidum was particularly active whenever the participants responded. So what are we finding here? We're finding the statement they made at the beginning of 11. Now they gave us an example of a research study that was done in order to show or prove or test this statement. And what did they find? They found that, in fact, the same neural circuits, what they call the ventral pallidum, was active whether the participants perceived the pictures or they were subliminal. Okay? So continuing to talk about the brain here, this area is located in what used to be called the reptilian brain. Reptilian brain. It's a concept that many people are familiar with. Well below the conscious area of the brain. Okay, what does that mean, well below? Okay, so here we have to bring a little bit of world knowledge, right? We have to know that when we look at the brain, we kind of have to open it up in the depth to know that the layers represent different aspects of our body, our character, our personality, our actions. Right? So the reptilian brain is below. If we had a picture here, we could see the brain, and we would see that below the brain, below the conscious area. The reptilian brain is where this area is, the ventral pallidum. Okay, explains this author's senior author, a professor of neuropsychology, who wrote a book. The results suggest a bottom-up decision-making process in which the ventral pallidum is part of a circuit that first weighs the reward and decides, then interacts with the higher-level conscious regions later, if at all. Right? So now he's telling us about a certain process that is being made. The process is that the ventral pallidum, which we learned here, was an area that lit up whenever they perceived the image of money. The ventral pallidum basically makes the decision about if there's a reward involved in an action, and then it moves that decision onto a higher level conscious region later, and that is the process. But he also says, if at all. If at all means maybe not, doesn't even do that. It's a phrase that says this could happen, but also there's a very high likelihood that it doesn't happen. All right? Let's stop here for a moment and look at our question. No, you know what? I'm going to do another 2 paragraphs on this issue, and then we'll stop this and I'll do the questions at the next recording. So paragraph number 4 says that scientists have spent years trying to pinpoint the neural regions. All right? So it means that this has, what does this mean? What do we know about this? This has been studied for a really long time, this issue of where things happen in the brain, the neural regions that perform conscious awareness. So far in vain. So far in vain is a phrase that means no results. No, they tried, nothing, nada, no results. But again, in contrast, there's little doubt it involves the prefrontal cortex, the thin outer layer of brain tissue behind the forehead, and experiments like this one show that it can be the last neural areas to know when a decision is made. Right? Remember, we talked about how the reptilian brain, or the ventral pallidum, is well below the conscious areas of the brain. Okay? And now they're saying that the area of conscious awareness is most likely in the thin outer layer of tissue behind the brain, which they call the prefrontal cortex. That's the term they use. And they're beginning to discover that it can be one of the last neural regions when the decision is made. All right, see you next time.